Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time coming. Boy, howdy. It's been forever, really. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jared Baratoka Siglioni, and this is the Wood2Podcast, where we talk about stuff, things, video games, anything really, from a very amateur, if not definitely mediocre perspective. And this is definitely not a journey I could do alone. I'm actually joined by one of my good friends and co-casters for life, Michael Fisher. How you doing today, dude?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man. That was quite the intro. Co-caster, big title. You're making me wear co-caster for life.
For
I already
life,
feel the
you're
pressure.
locked in, and there's no going back. You're locked into this queue. Oh, what the fuck? I'm out. Oh, sorry. So this is a new thing where we're doing. I finally have the equipment myself to stream and to do a little bit of podcast recording at the same time. So what we're doing is we're incorporating a live broadcast of the podcast while we're recording it. So later on YouTube, it was going to be available for everyone's viewing pleasure. We will filter in questions from chat if we do manage to have some time. But we have some very important stuff to talk about because there's some exciting stuff happening in the world of gaming right now. First and foremost, they Riot themselves, those dirty little devils. They've released this new set of patch notes, which is going to be the world's patch. Patch 10.19 patch notes have come out, and we're gonna dive in into these. Of course, as we continue to break this down, this will influence also what we expect to see in our local area too. Again, for those that don't know, me and Fish are part of the Boise State University esports broadcast, where of course they play League of Legends, and these patch notes are not going to be dodged by them. They're going to be hit by these changes as well. So we're going to dive into this a little bit, see what kind of changes might stick out. Overall, the buffs. You got Ari being buffed, Aphelios, Aurelia, Ivern, Sivir, Silas, Udyr, and Vayne. It's going to be pretty big, but I don't know if any of these buffs. Well, of course, we'll get into a later review. I don't know if any of these buffs are going to be enough to bring these champions into the meta. Fish, do you have any insight or any hopes that maybe one of these champions can be pulled up to the ranks?
Before we get to the champions, the first thing I actually want to point out is so this is the world patch, which,
Mm-hmm.
if correct me if I'm wrong, is the patch. This is what they're gonna play on, right? The professionals, or is
Yeah.
this just our world's? So I looked up a video from the LCS, the playoffs. They played on 10:16. So that
Oh,
means
for
we're
their
gonna have.
playoffs?
Yeah, the
Holy
FlyQuest
cow.
TSM game was on patch 10:16. I actually just pulled up the VOD. That means there's 3 whole patches that the pros have to adjust to. So that is very
Wow.
weird to me. I know obviously the pros are always behind because Riot doesn't want to have something that's just insanely OP that they miss, and that just sort of carries a team into a
Right.
spot they maybe didn't deserve. So that's the first thing that is going to go with me is, yeah, we're looking at 10:19. There, you listed the 8 champions that got buffed, but we have to count 10:17, 10:18.
Shoot.
So I mean, there's a lot of different patches that are going to be going into who's going to be played. So it is kind of weird to me because I think we could see a entirely different meta at Worlds because there's just champions that have been buffed that we're used to. So
Mm-hmm.
the pros just finally get a touch.
That's true. I always think it's a very interesting kind of angle that Riot likes to adjust things at each individual performance level. You see the breakdown of this key: average, skilled, elite, pro. A lot of these balance changes, of course, with the worlds coming up, they want to make sure everything's competitive. Now that you mention it, though, going back as far as 1017, one of the big staples for like bot lane or jungle specifically, you got Caitlyn and Hecarim taking huge hits here back in 1017. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they continue to nerf Caitlyn here in 1019. So that's gonna be something we might not even be able to see here in the later stages of these brackets as things develop. I don't know if Caitlyn is going to be able to be competitive. They removed 5 movement speed from her, which is kind of like the meme nerf. But then looking back onto these recently released patch notes, attack damage like per level, just base level, and then her attack speed growth, both taking pretty huge cuts. I don't know if it's going to be enough to keep her out of the meta because at the end of the day, she's still a really safe ADC. She's got like the longest range until Tristana hits level like 16 or 15, I think. And I mean, beyond that, 90 caliber net, pretty safe peeling tool. You have to ace in the hole for not only vision but some nice isolated damage. I don't know if it's enough to take her out, but those are things to consider. You also have a different set of kind of changes happening to Hecarim. Um, they, for some reason, whoever did this initially was, I think, kind of crazy because making it so Hecarim gets 100% attack speed over the course of his charge, the devastating charge here, that's that was a little too much. So bringing that back down to snuff, down to 25 to 85%, I think is the right call. Um, Beyond that, I really don't see anything really shaping up to change much. Both Lux and Sona are nerfed, so we're not going to see like a North American team do weird North American things like Taric Sona bottom or Sona Lux bottom. Um, and unfortunately, because of the way that they've ruled things this year, despite Yon as well as Samira being available for play everywhere else by 1019, only Lilia, the third most recent champion release, is going to be able to be played in Worlds, which I don't know. Based off the North American performance, I really don't think that she's going to be a pretty highly contested jungler because I just wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed with her. I think the one thing that you did mention that I wanted to go back to was the Caitlyn, and that to me says that there has to be something we're missing because, as you mentioned, they nerfed Caitlyn's movement speed in 1017. That wasn't ever played in any of the qualifiers for Worlds.
Right.
Now in 1019, you read their notes. Caitlyn has been dominating. We're not confident that our previous nerf has been enough to level the playing field. You see the key there. It says it's a pro scale nerf. So I don't know if there's like show matches going on, if there's scrims going on that Riot is like spectating that are on 1018. But it is weird to me to say, okay, the pros that we've seen have never played on 1017, but that nerf wasn't enough. Let's now nerf Caitlyn on 1019. So that to me goes all the way back to, okay, how can you have all these different patches and then say, okay, we got to nerf Caitlyn at a pro level, but the pros have never played on the 1017 patch where they nerfed her movement speed. So
right.
Very, very weird. But yeah, I think going to the new champions, the Samir one, okay, it makes sense. She obviously came out in the Worlds patch. There's always a 2-week delay until a new champion can be played on average. The Yone one is what's really interesting to me. I ended up looking it up because I was really curious. I know somebody mentioned it in one of the LCS broadcasts. The whole point of the Yone not being played is last year, Pantheon's big rework went through at the same time after the playoffs had commenced, but before Worlds, and there was enough time to put it on the Worlds patch. And then Pantheon last year was 100% pick ban, which apparently is something Riot doesn't want to happen. They've said, we don't want any champion to be 100% pick ban. We want everyone to be played. So they said anything that isn't played in the playoffs going forward can't be played in Worlds, which to me screams that's just poor patch management by Riot. They should have this planned out months in advance. They should have said, all right, what patch does Yone need to be on to be able to put him in Worlds, or to be able to put him in the playoffs so he can be played in Worlds? Because it is just embarrassing that you're gonna have a champion who for 6+ months cannot see competitive play because you messed up a patch order. That to me is very, very poorly designed by Riot. I mean, Samir, like I said, makes sense, but Yone, that's just embarrassing.
I think there's some degree of leniency that I can offer them, mainly because, at the beginning of the year, we all got affected by COVID-19, and I think that really put things in a huge scramble. But at that point, I think you're right. 6 months is a very long time, and that's such a cool champion to be able to watch at this kind of high echelon of play. I would love to see a team. You see sometimes teams build around Yasuo when like G2 picks it up for perks, but like to have like a Korean team like Damwon Gaming put their Yone mid or Yone top, like just to watch how the other side of the player base kind of executes that kind of champion, I think that would be really cool to watch. We're unfortunately not going to see it, definitely not this year, so that is kind of sad. I think that when it comes down to it, there's really not going to be, I don't think, that many really big flashy champions being played this Worlds because of just how stagnant and objective focused all like the metas are. I mean, a lot of the time we see a huge disparity between the pacing and the style of gameplay between regions, but it's kind of really not that way. You have just like a 2v2 bottom lane that very rarely gets interrupted. Sometimes you'll play Twisted Fate. That's not really flashy. You know, you have the isolation 1v1 top lane. There's really not that many champions that are kind of showing up to be those really huge playmakers. And I think those two champions, I mean, Samira, of course, not going to happen, but Yon specifically could have really, really mixed things up. Now, when it comes down to it, in 1019, back in 1016, they buffed Akali, and then further back beyond that, on 1012, they also buffed her as well, really increasing her like damage throughput by getting that extra E damage through. But now they've nerfed her Q specifically because of how well she's been doing since 1016 in the professional play. But you know, you and I were talking about it before we started recording. That's not even something that's on the docket for North America. No one's playing Akali in North America, so this is something that I think every other region needs to be careful of, because I think it's LCK or LPL that are ones that are pulling this through. And I mean, if it's just one region pulling a ban on a champion, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's honestly insane if that has to be because, and like you said, I mean, I don't remember. I'd have to go back and watch the LCS, but I don't remember them talking about Akali being this big force that's going to be a concern. Yeah, I think Akali, you're right. I think the only one in 1019 that is a global nerf would be Senna. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is the one champion that we're going to see absolutely just removed from competitive play the second time now that Riot has had to put drastic changes on Senna because they didn't release as they want. As you see there, the chance for her to get a Mist Wraith cut in half from 8.3 to 4.16 on when she kills, which probably means that Senna is going to be slowly phased into the support role that Riot, I guess, designed her for. She's had
Right.
her insane limelight as an AD carry. They tried to bump it back with the original nerf. They found a way. They said, okay, even if you don't get souls, you can still poke for souls. She's still a very strong AD carry. Let's bring her back.
Mm-hmm.
So Senna, I think, is going to be the one when I see these patch notes that's like, okay, who's the third AD carry now? Because at least in NA, which is, I'll be honest, just the one that I watch the most, mainly because of the timing. I mean,
Honestly,
there was
yeah.
like a world playoff game for LCK that was like 4 in the morning, and I'm like, I'll check it out, but I think I fell asleep in game 2 because it's just like not like viable for someone in North America to always watch them. So I'll be honest, I do
Right.
have some LCS bias just because of the time for the most part, but it's usually been Caitlyn, Ashe, Senna have been kind of the big three in NA. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Senna's probably going to fall off. So that's the one when I read these patch notes where I'm like, okay, this probably matters. The Twisted Fate one, 5 movement speed. That's a joke. I don't know who at Riot thinks that movement speed is so overpowered. If we take 5 of it away, they'll stop playing this champion. So
Right.
I think Senna's the only one we're going to see really impacted from 1019 in terms of globally at Worlds. But you're right, Akali feels like that isn't in one region, or maybe two. Maybe it is LCK and LCL getting a champion basically knocked off a peg to nearly an unplayable state. Because before those buffs in 1012 and 1016, as a former Akali main, she was pretty
She's too
bad.
tough. Yeah, you really have to be executing in a way that you are definitely like leagues above your opponent. And I guess there could be some argument as to whether or not that's the case within the group stages. We'll go ahead and pull those up right now just to see what kind of brackets we're looking up. Let me see if I can get these pulled up because I have them somewhere. Let me just find them here. Let's see. Worlds 2020. Look at this insane production. Because the group draw happened this morning, and there's supposedly 2 groups of death, which I think is hilarious. So these are the groups before play-ins come into play. G2 Esports, Sunning Gaming, Machi Esports, pretty easy group for G2 specifically, which is kind of the European favorite. Damwon Gaming, JD Gaming, and Rogue. Rogue being the newest or newer team from Europe, the LEC, to merge and get themselves to Worlds. Pretty impressive overall. That's one of the groups of death. That's a incredibly difficult group to get themselves through. Damwon Gaming, JD Gaming, they take this game beyond seriously. And to be completely honest, I'd be very surprised to see both these European representations getting through these two stages. G2, I feel a little bit more comfortable if I had to put money down, but I'd be very surprised to see Rogue coming out the victor. And then, interestingly enough, a lot of people are kind of going back and forth on this for Group C here. TSM, Fnatic, and Gen G. That's that's a pretty tough group. I think if you're a fan of North America, if you're a TSM fan, those are definitely two teams that you don't want to see. You have to face yourself up against. Gen G specifically, that's going to be really difficult for them to overcome. Fnatic maybe, typically or historically, Fnatic and North American teams kind of have a weird trade off on wins over each other, but Gen G, I don't see them losing once they get to their play-in stage or their group stage. And then top esports, DRX, and then FlyQuest. Also a very hard, difficult, and challenging group for North America. I don't think it's impossible, but if anything, DRX is going to be the team to give FlyQuest the most challenge here in that group. And then if we did have to go into the playing groups, I'm sorry, other North American fans, Team Liquid fans out there. This is looking pretty tough. Mad Lions, I mean Legacy Esports, and then INTZ. Like, good luck, man. Group B, no one really cares. Rainbow 7, not Rainbow 6, because that's a Siege game. Uh, Unicorns of Love, LGD, going to be the kind of the top runners there. These PSG Talent and V3 Esports, they're kind of wild cards as of right now. So it's gonna be kind of interesting. When does this all start? When to tune in, guys? This is important. We're going over this live for you. Worlds runs through September 25th through the 28th for the play-in group stage. So this is the play-in schedule. Okay. Quarters begin on October 15th through the 18th. Semis on the 24th through the 25th. And the finals conclude on October 31st, which is hella weird.
Yeah, that's over a month from the time of the play games to the finals. They definitely drew that one out extremely long.
You know what's crazy? So, like, okay, you have all this research. You have kind of and this is kind of a perspective from you and me because, we do casting. It's something that we're used to doing. But when it comes down to it, the professionals at the League of Legends level for any region, they have to have some sort of fanaticism with the region that they represent. Despite everything, and despite it kind of being in Riot's best interest to put your best casters forward, if this isn't like a LCK, LPL, like dominated tournament, like a dominated Worlds, it's super sad that the only English broadcasting, is only going to be done here in North America. So, yes, you're going to get your same favorite casters from the LCS, but they're going to be talking about things that I'm sure that they're knowledgeable about. But again, that level of fanaticism, you hear LS talk about, LPL, LCK as a whole, and you can tell that guy is very passionate about the region. He can, of course, talk about other regions, but I think it's kind of Riot's doing themselves a disservice by not continuing to extend the opportunity for other English-speaking casters to join the world's broadcast here, towards the later stages. And again, it's very well possible that we'll see nothing but, English-speaking North American and LEC teams, but let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a two-side coin. I mean, as a caster, I have to agree with you. More opportunities for casters is never a bad thing, but at the same time, if you want to consider yourself a professional caster, you should be able to take a team. They say, hey, you're going to do this game. It's a team you've never seen. You should be able to put in the work and be able to get hyped, to be able to sell that like you've been watching them forever. So I do think it is a double-edged blade in a sense where, yes, it is unfortunate that there's not more opportunities for casters as someone who is a caster, because of course the more opportunities there are, the more opportunities there's for you and I
Right.
and everyone else. But at the same time, as a caster, you should be able to say, you know what, I've never seen Rainbow Seven play, but my golly, I'm gonna make it sound like I know everything about this team. I'm going to look up all their previous games. Just the work you have to put in as a caster. So, like I said, double-edged
Right.
sword. But I still think it's up to the casters to make it sound like, wow, I would be shocked if we'll just use Freak because he's the biggest name caster. You want people to think like, wow, Freak has been watching every LCK game and casting it in his spare time. He knows everything about these teams. That's on the other casters to bring that level of professionalism. So,
Yeah.
you know what? If they don't, then that's something they definitely should probably look into changing.
Definitely, and I guess it's kind of extended upon to anyone who has the opportunity to be a caster because, you know, they say that the chain of progression is like if you can't play, coach, and if you can't coach, cast, and if you can't cast, analyze. But I think there really is a huge amount of work that goes into being a good caster because there there does require that extra effort into not only researching the how or the what, but the why as well. It's super important. Um, when it comes down to it, it's for a lot of organizations, for a ton of these programs, both at the professional level, the amateur level, the collegiate level, things that we're used to. It's still up in the air, and it's because there's a lot of people that can't put the value of such effort into a numerical number. You can't put a dollar sign on like a good 6 hour broadcast because people don't understand how much that's worth yet. It's still so much in its infancy that we're still trying to determine for some reason what it's worth for it to have a good caster, to have good really good play by play and color commentary, that interaction between the two, and then beyond that, having someone that can run production by themselves. Those are all hugely marketable if indeed esports continues to grow at the rate that it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as you said it perfectly, that there is this weird thing where I don't think there's an intrinsic value you can put on casting, and so, I think there's also this um, mindset, and it stems from sports. And I'm not going to say I've personally seen it, but I know at the sports level, which is kind of what drove me away from sports casting, is that there's this belief that, oh, if someone played the game at a high level, they clearly are able to cast the game at a high level. Like, I'll use football for an example. The color
Mm-hmm.
commentary is almost always a former professional football player. And there's been some good ones, and there's also been some ones
Yeah, you got
where they
Romo's
basically
pretty good, man.
yeah, no, Romo's great. There's also some other ones like, you want a former Cowboy, Jason Witten. He was
Right.
absolutely atrocious. Booger McFarland was another one who kind of got memed out of his job because he just said things that were so blanket level and so just basic commentary. And you can kind of say, well, did he really get his job because he earned it, or did he get his job because he's a former football player and people think they know what they're talking about? So I think there also is this thing where some universities, some people just say, "Oh, this guy played it. You know what? He's a sub on the team. Let's just put him in on the color commentary. He'll be able to break it down." And then they get on camera, and it's like, I just know how to play the game. I don't know, I don't
Right.
know why I play Shen top. I just play Shen top because my coach says it's really OP, and I know how to play it well. So I think
Right.
there also is this thing where there's not a sense of how do we make color and play-by-play sound great. It's all right. We'll get our best play-by-play man, and then you just stick a high-level player on there at the color, and he'll be able to break it down, easily. And it doesn't always work like that. So I think casting is one of those things where, if you want to talk about a collegiate level, it's like probably last on the radar. You want to have good players, obviously,
Right.
because you want to have good production, at least enough production to make your product viewable. And then you're like, well, the caster part we'll just throw on at the very end. We'll get whoever we can. So yeah, I think casting definitely is one of those things where you can tell the difference between a great caster and someone who's just up there because they have to, but it's hard to sometimes place a value on it, especially because, well, you're watching the game. What do you need a caster for? You just watch the game, right? So it is kind of a weird place to be in.
Right. And I think again it kind of stems from that to reference back to it, the infancy of esports overall because you know someone makes a great kick, someone makes a great pass, someone gets an interception because of how long football's been around, people can understand, holy shit, that was like a phenomenal thing to happen for my team. I'm super hyped about that. You have these people who are in this position, especially when it comes to scholarships for college, they have their kids who have been playing video games and play their video games so well, they've been offered sometimes full ride scholarships to some universities, and the parents have no idea what to get hyped about. It's crazy because it's then at that point no longer just the responsibility for like your color and your play by play to dictate what's happening on the screen, but for them to put it in a way that can be not only understandable and digestible by all audiences, but then to be able to create hype that is accurate, true, and genuine, so people can get on board. And you and I have gone through the process of, especially those live events that we used to cast at Boise State University. We haven't been able to do that in a while because of everything going on, but hopefully we'll get back to that soon. Seeing those parents show up and they have those kind of those weird questions, because you can understand they're trying to understand what's happening on the screen, and they're trying to buy in to why their kid's so hyped and why everyone else is so hyped. And the moment that you see that kind of the clicking, those two dots click, on in the mind of that parent or that support, it's such a phenomenal experience because, you know, I don't know about you, but for me personally, I've been like ridiculed by how much I was kind of a fanatic about video games, and to see that kind of same light that I've demonstrated over my life, to have that replicated somewhere else and have someone be truly supported in their dreams to chase this, I think that's phenomenal. And to be able to have that opportunity, I think is super cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the growth we've seen in esports over just the last 2 or 3 years has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you had told me Boise State was going to have an esports program when I was going to school, I would have just laughed at you. And to see where it is now is absolutely incredible. And I didn't even graduate 5 years ago at this point. That just speaks to the growth. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I've said it before, and I don't want to take away from everything that's gone on with the coronavirus
Mm-hmm.
and the impact that it's had, but I really do think that it has been a huge boon for esports, because it has sort of said, hey, you can't play football, you can't play a lot of these close sports, at least in some conferences, but you can still play esports because no one needs to be there. You can go with two production teams, one man on the casting booth,
Right.
one other person from their house, all the players at their homes, and everything works just as seamlessly as when everyone's in the arena. So I definitely think that that has been a bit of a boost to maybe bringing it to the forefront of like, hey, look what we still can do in case
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't get better, or in case something else happens that makes it so we need to make sure we stay inside our houses. So I definitely think that esports is going to be just booming here soon. I wouldn't shock me if 10, 30, 20 years from now, esports has moved past hockey and potentially baseball as the third or fourth biggest major sport in North America. I don't think it's ever going to touch football, and it's never going to touch basketball, but I think
Right.
baseball is ripe for the picking. I think hockey, at least in the United States, hasn't really, it's sort of peaking, and I know there's some crazy fanatics, I know there's some crazy cities, but I think esports definitely could be, by the time we're in our 50s, Baratel, we could be like, wow, I would never have guessed I'm going to turn on Saturday on ESPN and we're going
Right.
to have 6 hours of Worlds coverage, and then the next day it's going to be NFL football. Like, esports is definitely booming, and if these companies handle it right, they make the right sponsorship deals, this is just the beginning of it.
Right. I mean, you can kind of alluding to that. You see all these football organizations in Europe, like the soccer organizations, they're the ones putting money forward to the teams, and that's exactly the direction that you want to have things go, because those guys got big money. I mean, over there specifically, but I mean, the parallel for that would specifically just be you going into things, with the right mindset and having, major football teams, or the NBA drafts, or specifically just teams in general, just pick up other people. But that is a great segue for us talking about the potential of what can happen with everything going on in the world. Esports kind of taking the limelight, or I guess the center stage, as to what can happen collegiately. Interestingly enough, though, this weekend there's a big ol' event, the HUE Invitational, powered again by Nerd Street Gamers. League of Legends and Overwatch, I believe, are the two games being played, and these are the groups. Now, the reason we bring this up specifically is because our very own Boise State University squad has been invited, and they've been put into Group A against, long rivals, Maryville University, teams that we're pretty comfortable with facing on the Rift, but other teams, Ohio State, Columbia College, Arizona State, and then I didn't even know that Maryville had a B squad, but the fact that they have that big of a roster, when it comes down to it, just goes to show you how involved these colleges are getting with this esports thing, if you could call it a thing. It's kind of its own organism, and it's growing rapidly.
Yeah, it's awesome to see stuff like this. I mean, it's crazy to see the number of schools and a lot of at least as someone who grew up as a college football fan, a lot of these schools that college football fans are going to recognize: Ohio State, University of Texas, University of California, University of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State University. So it is nice to see these big name colleges get involved. As you mentioned, I know Maryville's definitely a team. Boise State was maybe not hoping to be in the same group as. They are one of the shining forces in esports, but it's always a great test to see how you match up against them. I am curious just to see, and you see a lot of School A and School B, what the demographics are for the players, because I mean
Right.
Boise State, they have a couple of teams and they're very talented, but there is a slight drop off in the skill level. I mean, Boise State's A team has a challenger player, and the B team is made up of a lot of Diamond 4 players. So there
Right.
is that very big gap. They're all good players. I mean, Diamond is still Diamond. I'm not going to say anything bad, but there is a gap. So I am curious, is Ohio State A 5 challengers and Ohio State B is 4 Diamond 2s and a
They just have just
Grandmaster?
a
So
bunch of gold players or something just to
yeah, I mean,
fill up the
I am
roster.
curious. I am curious to see what I think. Boise State and Ohio State met in a tournament last spring. I don't know if any of the players are the same, and I think Boise State ended up winning despite the fact that Ohio State had the higher ranked players. So
Mm-hmm.
that just goes to prove that ranking means nothing, because everyone's ranked in solo queue. This
Right.
is a team queue game. I want to say, and I am going to look through here some of the past broadcasts, I do think Boise State and Western actually met in the Broncos' most recent tournament, the UCI Best Coast tournament, and I
Right.
don't believe it went well for Boise State. That was
Yeah.
part of their struggle, but this is a new Boise State team. They started off the UCI Best Coast tournament the first time that this new team had ever played together. They added a new jungler in Aqua. They added a new mid laner in Ascent, moving Red Hots, a Bronco favorite, up to the top lane. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely going to be an interesting revenge story. Yeah, it looks like Western beat them. I believe it was 2-0 here in the UCI Best Coast tournament. So definitely going to be interesting to see how that rematch goes, if it is the same players on the side of Western, if they are in the same group.
Yeah, and we're gonna in the background here as we talk about, because you mentioned specifically, you're gonna hear yourself, and I'm very sorry for this, but when it comes to it, Boise State having kind of a new squad and trying to find themselves their footing and their strengths, we can only see these highlights provided again from Boise State University's own broadcasts themselves. How well these players have finally developed and kind of chiseled away at what they want to have for a comp, and it's kind of scary because when they are ahead, they do some absolutely crazy stuff. And I mean, again, this is just based off of time. It's only a matter of time before this team continues to chisel away at that edge and make it as sharp as possible. Because at the beginning of the invitational, this last tournament, not looking too hot, but now like they are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, this Boise State team definitely came into their own. Just taking a look at, I mean, some of the team comps from this game against Western. I definitely think Boise State going back would probably maybe change a little bit. I know game one you had Red Hots on the Gangplank, and something that he didn't play very well. He's definitely done well on better tank champions. I know this was when Aqua played Vi, which is something he's very strong on. I know game two you even had Ascent on the Galio. He's sort of shown up as more of than a support mid laner,
Mm-hmm.
and we saw some insane plays from him on Lucian earlier this week. So I definitely think this was still the team figuring out, okay, how do we build around this? I mean, how do we kind of handle Red Hots in the top lane? How do we handle Aqua playing more of a carry jungle style, sacrificing that tank role? So definitely I think something Boise State is going to be more than happy to run back here in this tournament when these teams meet.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to one of our previous points is just the fact that like a lot of this opportunity and whatnot has been offered to new faces to the team, new faces to competitive and collegiate esports. Ascent being one of the crucial instruments for Boise State's success, and getting himself, of course, in recent competition, player of the game, granted to him again by CCU. No discredit or taking away from that kind of that plug there, but I mean, definitely earning his spot on this roster and continually showing up and providing, like you're saying, that utility, but also just raw damage. I mean, you see him busting out the Lucian mid and just tearing things up.
Yeah, like I said, I looked it up. This was the third game of the UCI Best Coast tournament when Boise State and Western University met. The Broncos ended up losing that one, but as we said, that would have been only the third game that this team had played together. Boise State ended up winning their last 2 games. So yeah, I definitely think Boise State has improved tremendously. I definitely think that the call-outs have improved tremendously. The coordination has improved, and really the other thing is other people are starting to come into this sort of bannable champion role. I mean, if you want to talk about Boise State, Dean Sona, usually something that's taken away. A sense Rumble has been almost always banned away. But then you see stuff like Graves being taken away from Aqua consistently, Nidalee being taken away from him consistently, and he still shows up on other things like the Vi and the Kindred. So I definitely think this is a team where it could eventually get to the point where, we kind of have to let Ascent play Rumble, which is definitely his favorite champion, something he climbs on continuously because everyone else is playing so well. Right. And also he's playing well on other champions like the Lucian, like the Azir. Now, I will say, unlike the professional players like we talked about earlier, collegiate players don't have any sort of restrictions. Usually the only restriction is new champions have to be
2
out
weeks.
For 2 weeks.
That's about it.
So, but you do see it, and we talked about it. We Ascent on the Lucian, a champion that is going. Actually, this patch isn't going to come out in time. Never mind. As I say, that's a champion getting nerfed, but this patch isn't going to be out.
Yeah, it's gonna be next Monday, so it'll be right after this tournament. So, no real changes, between what we're gonna see this week and what we'll see this weekend specifically. And it is because of the fact that you have these new players and they're able to shine. You have Aqua, you have Ascent doing just tremendous amount of work, but it is off the foundation laid by veterans themselves, such as Robert Goblin here. Can't get dopamine links, whatever you want to call him. He is such a instrument and such a catalyst for the success of his team, along the side Dean, their challenger player, and Red Hots, who has just been so well flexed into this top lane. They are just using every resource they have to such an nth degree that, again, now that they've kind of developed that edge and started honing it, it's going to be pretty hard for a lot of teams to kind of dismantle that kind of game plan, if you will.
Yeah, I definitely think that you're 100% right. The OGs have kind of set the path. I will say there are a couple of things from Boise State that I hope we don't see. I definitely think, as you saw in this game, I don't want to see a forced Twitch funnel where you try and play this double Enchantress mid and top lane. I don't think, even though it worked against an Illinois team that, to put it nicely, probably wasn't taking the game as seriously as they should have for a competitive environment. So I like Aqua on the Twitch, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if the double funnel is going to work. I know when we saw Red Hots on the Lulu in the top lane in another game, they tried to do that sort of double 80 carry, double Enchantress. It didn't go very well. So maybe not put him on the Twitch, and then that would be the one thing that I'm kind of saying. And then the other thing, we saw in a game against, I believe, Bay State, where Boise State had to have a huge comeback, Aqua definitely has to play the carry junglers. He tried a Skarner game. It did not work, which Skarner sort of requires the rest of your team to finish the game early, because once everyone's bought their QSS, Skarner basically becomes a cannon minion because his ult is literally countered by one item.
Right.
So I definitely think if Boise State has learned from some of their losses, and all right, we can't play double funnel, we cannot put Aqua on something that he can't hard carry on, I think Boise State's going to be very well prepared to sort of at least advance to the next stage. I don't want to say dominate because I haven't seen all of the players on all of the teams, and I know they're very talented, and it's teams that Boise State has struggled against in the past, but they should be set up at least to advance into the next round, and after that, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, and I kind of just what we're hoping for, right? Despite everything, we want to have a very competitive match, but I definitely want to see some blue and orange there at the final semis, or even just the grand finals would be cool. I'll be all right with that. Not a problem for me.
Oh yeah, I'll take Boise State in the grand finals. Now I think I don't think it's a 2-day tournament because I believe one day's League of Legends and one day's Overwatch.
Yeah,
I don't know who's casting it. If Boise State is involved in casting it, I haven't heard. But the only way I don't want Boise State in the grand finals is if I'm casting and it's a one-day affair because, even the professionals get a break in between games when it's, LCS
true.
regular season. So
Yeah,
8+ hours of casting, that one could be a doozy.
that'd
At
be
the end of it,
not fun.
I'll just start screaming random things at the screen to see if they stick. So that would be the only way where I'm like, can Boise State, maybe get a bye or lose early? I don't want to be here all day, and I don't want to lose my voice because, as I mentioned, there's an Overwatch tournament the next day too, and Boise State has several talented casters. Like I said, I don't know who's involved with what, but
Right.
I don't know if
That's
I
tough.
personally
Yeah.
can handle League of Legends into the grand finals into Overwatch in the grand finals. At the end of the day, you just hear I'd sound like someone who's been smoking for 90 years. Like, oh, there they go, please. It just would not be good for me personally. So that would be my one concern because top 16, if they do that all in one day, that's going to be a long day for
Yeah. This
everybody.
is kind of the scary part. Is it's top 16. There's there's 6 groups here. Yeah, you're taking the top 2 from Group E and F, but getting 3 teams from each previous group to that 16, and then what is it? Best of 3, best of 1? Is it single elimination, double elimination? Like those are kind of the bits of information that we need, and hopefully we get that towards closer towards this huge weekend. But when it comes down to it, it can be a very very long and arduous day for League of Legends fans here. Um,
Yeah, sorry not to interrupt
oh,
you,
you're
but
good.
it just came into my mind. I don't even know if that's doable in one day, right? I mean,
Right.
I would
Unless
assume
it's
let's
concurrent, right?
yeah, like I would let's assume it. I mean, Worlds isn't double elimination after. Let's assume this is the Worlds format where it's group play into single elimination after that for the top 16, which makes sense for a big tournament like this.
Right.
You're basically being forced to play best of one. I mean, yes, you can play groups A through F in the group stage all at the exact same time because of COVID, there's not going to be teams. At least Boise State, we have our really cool arena.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have everyone in the arena. If Boise State had brought in a B team, that'd be 10 players playing at
Oh,
the same
thank the
time. Oh, there
Lord.
it
Koba's
is.
showing up. The format is
Let us
best of
know.
1 for first 3 games versus Maryville, Western Ohio. Be starting at 11 Mountain Standard Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. After that, it goes to bracket formatting, playing a best of 3 after the best of 3 Saturday play is over. The rest is on Sunday, so it's split up to 2 days. Somehow.
That's not too bad. I don't know if I mean, I don't know if League of Legends is quite the game that should be playing best of 1 in the group stage. I think that opens it up to one team getting, you know, a cheat comp off or something. I don't think League of Legends is a game that's played in best of 1 format. I understand timing. They kind of have to do that. That would be my one concern. The other thing would be, I mean, how do you determine who gets what side? I mean, there's a small advantage blue-red in League of Legends, so it's
Mm-hmm.
just coin flip. So if you see a team advancing simply on a coin flip, that's why I think best of 3, you at least give both sides the chance to play blue. You usually let either loser pick. So I like the format. I just don't think League of Legends is a game that should be played in a best of 1 winner-take-all format at a competitive level.
It's going to be a really, really tough one. Higher seed has choice. How's the seeding determined? I don't know. Koba,
Probably player rank.
Koba just
Usually it's by
flying in
average player
information
rank.
right now as he's literally 5 minutes away from orchestrating a scrim to prepare for this weekend. So thank you, Koba, for the flyby information. I was hoping to get you here on the broadcast because you literally have all the information. Yeah, by rank most likely, definitely. So that's going to be huge. I mean, it's going to be a huge thing, both for you people that are itching for some competition, but it's going to be huge because, I don't know if it's similar amongst other universities, but esports is the only thing really going on for BSU right now. So having something is definitely better than nothing.
Oh yeah, I mean, and if you win this and you're able to say, hey, Boise State, look the football team's not playing, but look who still was able to pull out a victory. So I definitely think that it could go a long way if Boise State does well in this tournament to
Hmm.
sort of reminding people that, hey, there's still stuff going on campus. Come check it out. As you mentioned, we'd love to have people come check it out in the arena, but at least you can go check it out online. Get some
Yeah.
food, get some popcorn, watch it. So yeah, I definitely think a huge showing would be great for Boise State. I definitely have huge expectations for this team. I would at least say I'm expecting them to get out of the group stage because in a format where it is 4 teams in a group for Boise State in Group A and they only have to be in the top 3,
Hmm.
basically you win one game, you're almost guaranteed to qualify. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but
Sure, but if one team just
if
gets
you
stomped and they can't win, then you automatically
yeah,
go.
I mean, usually in group plays like this, you'll see one team go 3-0, another team will go 2-1, and then either another team will go 0-3, or you could have a couple of 1-2 teams. So I
Right.
think if Boise State wins at least one game, they should be very well on their way to qualifying for the next round, and then anything can happen from there because as Nakoba dropped in with the flyby information, then it goes to best of 3. So that does allow a fluky game 1 to maybe be offset. But the best of 1 format, it does concern me because you have to go all in game 1. You can't let one mistake haunt you because you
Yeah.
usually can say, okay, hey, look, we've got a game 2, we've got a game 3. So that is going to be my one concern because I know Boise State recently, I think, has won 6 of their last 7 League of Legends games. A couple of those, they did drop game 1 and ended up having to come out on a reverse sweep. So I think even
Hmm.
their most recent one against Bay State, they lost the first game in like a 50-minute heartbreak and then ended up dominating the rest of the way. In this tournament, they would have just lost to Bay State. So,
Right.
like I said, not a big fan of the best of 1. I understand for timing reasons, but that definitely puts a lot of pressure on all of the teams. But since we're rooting for Boise State, specifically the Broncos, to make sure game 1 is their best game. No experimenting. You've got to go full force in game 1. Everyone on their best champ. Try and secure an early victory. And if you pick up 2, you're guaranteed to qualify. I
Right.
don't have the time to do the math, but if you go 2-1, I don't think the entire group can end up going 2-1.
Right.
So 2 wins and Boise State easily qualifies
The
for the next round.
four-way split somehow to
Yeah,
first
it sure
place.
could come. Yeah, it could come together in some crazy way, but I'm too. No, I don't have that much time or that much paper to figure out how it would all come together. So yeah, 2 wins for Boise State. If you're a Bronco fan, they're good to go.
Yeah, and I mean, for those that don't have anything to do this weekend, because I know we're guys, look outside and tell me you want to be out there. Let's be honest. So that means that you guys are able to and are strongly encouraged to tune into this event this weekend. I Even if Boise State's not directly involved with broadcasting, I would be very surprised to see that they don't have some hand in relaying the broadcast. Or in any event, follow the Twitter of Boise State, esports. Make sure that you're following because that kind of information is all readily available for you. That way, you don't have to rely on me, and my information is usually pretty bad. Um, get some support. You can still dress up, get crazy, rip off your shirt, and paint your body blue and orange. But instead of being out there on the football field, you're at home on the digital field for your team, and that team still needs your support. When it comes down to it, these are our best athletes at the moment, and they're going to continue to keep bringing it and try to represent Boise State as best as they can. Um, but that's gonna do it, I think, for a nice little spur of the moment kind of broadcast. A lot of information kind of happening at once, but felt the need to talk about it. Normally, the Wood2 podcast isn't one that has such a very specific uh, topic, if you will. It's usually pretty fucking random. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, if this is what's there to talk about, the demographic for the Wood2 podcast has yet to be determined. So in any event, it's the perfect time to just put information out there for information's sake. Now, if you guys liked what you heard, feel free, give a huge follow and shout out to my boy Michael Fishfisher here. Give him a follow. Get your Twitter machine out. Look up the man himself, the fish underscore cast. Give him a follow. Tweet at him that you liked his analysis, or tweet that you hate him and want him to die. Whatever way. Yeah, what do they say? Negative publicity is still good publicity, or just publicity by any publicity? I don't know. Anyway,
All publicity is good publicity. I
uh,
mean, you know what? They say that to me, then I probably queued with them in League of Legends recently. So,
right.
you know.
And then beyond that, if you liked what you heard here, go ahead and follow at Wood2Podcast on Twitter. If you liked the whole live thing, feel free to give a follow to the channel. I stream not consistently, but I do stream at www.twitch.tv/Baratel. Look forward to maybe doing more podcasts here in the future with definitely less of a gap between the two. But that's going to do it. This will be uploaded to YouTube somewhere. Probably youtube.com/Wood2Podcast. I don't know yet. I got to figure all that shit out. But thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it. Again, thank you, Fish, for being here. We got some sandwiches to go get.
Oh, heck yeah, heck yeah. Before you go, Baratel, real
What's
quick. Well, I know we talked about Worlds at the start of it, but furthest team in NA what NA team gets the furthest?
What
You
NA
need to tell me
team
where.
gets the furthest?
Yeah, you don't need to tell me how far, but what NA team gets the furthest? Real quick.
So does that mean that Team Liquid? Are you talking about just wins overall? Because Team Liquid has to get in still to
Team
groups.
Liquid's at a disadvantage. Yeah, Team
That's
Liquid,
true.
if
So
they
they're
lose,
-1.
If they all lose, then they would the farthest would be the group stage, and we'd call TSM, and we could break it down if
FlyQuest,
FlyQuest
sure.
or TSM wins. But yeah, Team Liquid's at a disadvantage. So who do you think is gonna make it the farthest?
I'm thinking FlyQuest. I'll put my money on that. If my proverbial money.
You know what? They were the only team that looked good in the end of the LCS playoffs. I don't want to say it, but I think it's going to be TSM. I think TSM the only team that gets out of groups for NA. They'll get embarrassed quickly after that, but I think they're the only team that looked competent in the end of the LCS playoffs. I don't know how that came about, but give me TSM for some
You
sad
mentioned
reason.
that. I actually have something super funny to show you then real quick. My boy GBay99, I think he hit the nail on the head. So honestly, Group C is perfect group for TSM to get drawn. They lose to Gen G twice, but beat the play-in team twice, then split a series with Fnatic. And that allows them to get their usual 3-3 before losing a tiebreaker and getting knocked out.
Hey, if they make it to the tiebreaker, and
I guess
FlyQuest
that's
doesn't
pretty
make
far.
it, that would be the furthest.
All right. So if you guys want, pretty soon actually, this is a good time to mention this. We'll probably do like a mini episode for the podcast when it's alive. I got to put together a fantasy draft actually for this World's coming up. So what we're going to do is going to be fantasy draft. The normal application fee of $5 can be waived if you sub this September. You actually get a free in to the fantasy draft. So be on the lookout for that. And there will actually be some prizes at the end of it all for the ones that wins it all, or if we have to separate it into multiple drafts depending on how many people we want to have play. Whoever has the most points at the end will get themselves a nice, tasty prize. So do keep an eye out for that, as that does kind of get developed over time. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in. It's going to be a little break time, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for the podcast. Podcast listeners on YouTube or whatever the case, wherever I can post this shit, thank you for watching. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I love you.